of victory and the agony of defeat.
Madison, great ball around the corner, Petticini, he beats them all! Junior Polar out wide, bumped away from Trindle, Sharks coming through, none of them can hold this!
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of the Tip Sheet Podcast. As always, I'm your host, John, also known as 4020. Joining me on a wet and windy and a rather wild day of weather out here in Sydney, at least, is my good mate, Sixties. Big fella, the NRL is on the bye, but it is all happening in paradise this week. We got signings, we got re-signings, we got the NRLW kicking off. We have a lot to talk about. But before we do start talking turkey, before we do start talking the football, as always, how you doing, mate?
It's been a big day, John, as you know. Again, thanks for all the messages from people. Hopefully this week we start to get some answers with what's been happening with mum. So, but again, footy's a great respite. It's a great distraction from everything. So really looking forward to this podcast, John. Of course, thank you to our sponsors, Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan and Parramatta. And, of course, to the home of the Eels, Parramatta Leagues Club, where on July 25 we'll be doing our TCT watch party for the game against the Broncos. Looking forward to catching up with all of you then. Kicking off at 7 o'clock. The game kicks off at 8. We kick off at 7 o'clock. Free food, $5 beer of the month there in at Sterlo's. And, of course, our preview before the game. And, yeah, really looking forward to catching up with some of the regulars that listen to our podcasts or get in to see us in Sterlo's before the big game. All the good mates of the Cumberland Throw, some of our contributors. If you want to come in there, catch up with everyone, put faces to names of people that you might see posting or talking or in chat, a great place to do that. Sterlo's, Parramatta Leagues Club, round 21, July 25, Friday night. Couldn't be better, John. And, of course, no matter what platform you're either watching or listening to this on, if you can give it a like and subscribe, hit the notification bell as well for YouTube. All of that helps with the metrics, helps to get our content out there to fellow Eels supporters. We love the people that come and say good day to us and let us know that they're regulars on the podcast. But also, if I can encourage people who are regular viewers, if you just subscribe, that would be great as well. It all adds up to getting that content out there to more and more Eels people. John, as you said, so much going on at the moment in Paradise. How are you keeping up with it? Because you've been holding the fort quite a lot for me lately. You've been getting the content out there. You're doing well, mate?
Yeah, I've been pretty good in the sort of provision of being a fan of the Parramatta Eels, all things considering. We had that loss on the weekend in the NRL. Awful first half. We had a big breakdown of that 160s in our instant reaction, but Eels managed to quarantine that pretty putrid effort to the first 40 minutes and found a way to fight back before there was some controversy with the referees, and that certainly was a big flashpoint in that contest against the Dragons. But yeah, since then we've had a massive acquisition in the NRL. We've had the promotion of a very talented young junior in the NRLW to a frontline position in the NRLW squad. So yeah, I'm pretty good as a Parramatta fan, mate. A lot happening.
Yeah, and we've obviously got a lot to talk about tonight, both in the Eels news and NRL news. So you better hit that stinger and we'll get on with it.
Yeah, let's get right into it, mate.
News team, assemble!
Well, John, there's been plenty going on in the way of contracts, so I'm going to throw it over to you. Let's just catch up with everything that's been happening over the last few days, because there's been contracts on both the NRL and NRLW side of things, and we'll have a bit of a chat about each of those deals.
Yeah, so Just making sure my audio levels are right. We've got one person saying I'm quiet. Anyone else having those issues, guys? Is it just Seb? I'll keep going while we're talking. But, yeah, look, I nearly had to put the kibosh on you, Sixties. I had close friends of ours sending me messages saying that you are not allowed to announce any potential signings or people that were close to signing anymore when it looked like that Talon da Silva was going to head to Manly or maybe Newcastle. But thank goodness you're not going to get the put on you this time. The Parramatta Eels pulling off a coup in signing a very talented young player in Talon da Silva for a 4.5-year deal, joins the Parramatta Eels effective immediately from the West Tigers, bolsters our playing stocks at dummy half and gives us a really good foil to the talents of Riley Smith, who will be the Eels' industrious and hard-working dummy half to the sharper, more incisive work of Talon da Silva, through the middle of the ruck there. 4.5-year deal, 60s. We're waiting for concrete contract figures. The Daily Telegraph has put out a number in nebulous terms, which, look, he had a very hot market 60s. He had 4 clubs chasing after him, Parramatta, Newcastle, Manly and North Queensland. So he knew it was going to be a seller's market in that regard. But before we do, I don't want to comment on a throwaway line from the DT insofar as how his contract evaluation is. But Jason Riles has made a big, bold move here, Craig. 4.5-year deal for a talented dummy half, 20 years old. It's got a very high pedigree of junior representative football. Came into the West Tigers, done some good things there. Wasn't his best game on the weekend, freely admit that. Looked like a player that knew he was on the way out. And people can understandably be critical of that if they want to, but he now comes to the Parramatta Eels, and you got to think he's slotting straight into dummy half with Riley Smith suspended for one more leg of the competition. He's going to come straight into the starting or maybe rotational piece of our dummy half against the Penrith Panthers.
You'd have to think so, John. De Belin, Da Silva, the Eels. It's, as you know, John, that mail on Talon da Silva virtually went back to near the start of that mail with Galvin.
Exactly. It goes a long way back. And yeah, it was one that plenty of noise throughout, Craig, and you had good sources on it. But again, he had a very hot market, didn't he? Manly were very interested, Newcastle very interested, North Queensland equally very interested, but he did want to stay in Sydney. That was a pretty consistent messaging throughout the process. But yeah, Eels had to fend off some stiff competition there.
Well, very early on, it was that the two of them were going to come. And I must say that what happened with Galvin had me a little bit edgy because, again, the mail stayed strong, even to the point of getting a little bit of extra mail towards the end that the contract would be done by the end of the weekend. So, in other words, before Monday. And as it turned out, that mail was spot on. So the person who gave it to me, they might even be watching this now, might be listening to this now. So they did say, don't ever doubt me, Craig. Don't ever doubt me. I never doubted.
I mean, the Galvin situation has some pretty crazy extenuating circumstances.
Oh, look, it's been a crazy market this year. It's been not a market. It's just been the NRL's been crazy with players look like they're going one place and then another, and the media jumps on whatever mail they get, and they just put it out there straight away. I don't think there's too much in the way of due diligence that goes on with the reports or the rumours that they start to include. And so I think it really clouds some of the genuine mail that's out there, makes you doubt what you've heard.
I mean, there's just so much obfuscation and so much, managers will manipulate the media to push out rumours to drive value up. There's a lot that goes into it. It's all part of the game that is played by club and manager. And yeah, look, the key thing here is, and I know we've had questions chat about how much we've paid. The Daily Telegraph has put the figure at around $600,000 across the value per annum across the value of the contract. But again, in a nebulous throwaway sentence there, there's been no talk about structures, incentives, or anything like that. Look, the numbers tend to be a bit inflated when it comes to the initial evaluation for the media. I would not be surprised if we were forced to pay a pretty fair rate. 60s, like I said, 4 clubs chasing him, all desperate for a dummy half. But as I wrote on Monday in my my column, the weekend wrap, obviously you want to be trying to get players for value where you can, and that's a big part of building a roster. But the salary cap is a use it or lose it scenario. You can roll over 5% of your cap year to year. That was revealed recently, I think in the last 18 months. But if you don't use it, you lose it. And at some point, you got to pull the trigger. And whether we've paid over is obviously will be a factor we look at with the benefit of hindsight in a number of years. But Jason Riles wanted to make this move. He made this move happen. And from someone like me who has been quite critical of the club missing out on players like Herbie Farnworth and Tony Staggs in the past for not being willing to go the extra step, the extra year, the extra $50,000, whatever the margin is on a given contract, they got the job done. And for that, I salute them. Maybe we'll look like that. Maybe we will look back on this deal and say, yes, we paid too much. But I think that Talon's floor is a solid contributing dummy half inside your top 30. And with the salary cap expected to go up in the coming years, I think that you're probably going to be looking at the deal as, at worst, a good deal, if not maybe a great deal for the club.
I look back, John, at the end of 2022. Well, actually, it was at the start of 2022 that the contract for Reid Marnie was done to go to the Bulldogs for the start of 23. And the numbers that we were told back then, and it seems it was pretty solid, the mail, was $725,000. Now, if you look at that as being 3 years ago, and then you're talking about a talent like Talon De Silva, or you might say potential talent as well. But if that 600,000 is around the right figure, I don't think it's a wild number, especially projected out across 4 years as an average. So the other thing too is the extension that you're about to mention of Riley Smith.
And of course, the immediate the pushback I got from the comment section of my article when I was talking about Talon De Silva as part of the weekend wrap was, well, what about Riley Smith? What's he going to think about this? What are the young dummy halves in our system going to think about this? And I got stuck into the comments and had a bit of a robust conversation there. But I was also commenting perhaps a little bit of insight that I was really confident that Riley was going to be extending.
Let's face it. We had a little bit of mail that it was just about done. It was just about to be announced. So again, this is an example where we held back on saying something there, which we were expecting. You couldn't really
on this. Yeah, exactly.
You couldn't really jump in and say, look, this is.
Yeah. So hot off signing Talon De Silva for that 4.5 year deal. Riley Smith has also extended his stay till the end of 2027. So on board for obviously this year and then the next 2 seasons. It gives Jason Riles, the spine is obviously now a 5-man piece for him. You've got the starting 4 players plus the interchange dummy half. That gives him 4 of his 5 positions now locked in, which is huge. He's got Isaiah Yonge at fullback. He's got Mitchell Moses at halfback when he's available. Hopefully much more available next year, knock on wood. And then he's got his 2 dummy halves, Riley Smith and Talon De Silva. The big question mark now is obviously the number 6. We've got Joash Papali'i putting his hand up as probably the lead runner right now, but plenty of competition internally, 60s. Got a couple of young blokes having great years that are also putting their hands up. And Jason Riles is on the record saying that he likes what he's got internally amidst those players there. You've got consideration up at Twyde or Matty Hunter, Lorenzo Talatona in the longer-term picture. But then you've also got the coach coming out and saying that if a player's there on the market, we'll strike too. So most of his spine locked up here. He's got some great options internally. It now gives us, I won't say luxury, because I do think that we have some key pieces in the forward pack that we could still use to build on. But we have a little bit of breathing space now to sift through what's on the market, maybe work through some contracted players and their situations to then go find the right final piece in the forward pack to round out our recruitment for this year heading into 2026.
Yeah, so that's a huge step forward because, John, I think now there's things that have to be cleared up moving forward because people are probably starting to add up where are we sitting at in terms of the top 30 next year. you've got scenarios like what's going to happen with Sean Lane, what's going to happen with Ryan Madison for a start, because there was a lot of conjecture around those two. There may be some conjecture around Brendan Hands now because he's contracted for next year. It may well be that the club wishes to keep him there to have dummy half.
They might be comfortable with Brendan as the third option at dummy half with the utility background as well.
Yep, so we're not sure where that's going to head at the moment. What we do know is those three players I just mentioned have a contract for next year, but those things can change. We don't know whether anything's going to change with any other players. If there's anything that we've learnt about the rugby league world these days is that it's extremely fluid. It can change at a moment's notice.
On a dime, can't it? I mean, literally, Lachlan Galvin on Saturday before he signed the Parramatta Eels were confident he was there. Next day, he's at the Bulldogs. Look back on a couple of weeks, and what can be taken from you can be given elsewhere too. So the club is obviously kicking the tires. When we had Jim Sarantinos on the other week, he alluded to the fact the club was working behind the scenes to get a June 30 transaction made. They don't get much bigger than someone like Talon De Silva. So a lot can change in the space of a couple of days, in the space of a week, 60s. And yeah, that goes for long-term stuff too, where the club is obviously not finished with their recruitment and very keen to see what they can do from here on in.
And John, the other piece of signing news is the NRLW with Riverlea Arlaw being made part of the, top 24 or top 25?
Top 24 in the NRLW, yeah.
Yeah.
What a meteoric rise for Riverlea, who has been in phenomenal touch this year, was talismanic in the Tasha Gale, was player of the tournament, I believe, wasn't she, 60s, in the Tasha Gale?
Yes.
Yeah. Had representative honours follow that there, and has since been upgraded into the NRLW to make, and not just been upgraded, she's going to make her NRLW debut, which we'll get to shortly. Great talent. I watched her this year and really thought, wow, we could see her in NRLW the way she is dominating, because it wasn't just big athlete dominate smaller athlete sort of stuff that you sometimes see in junior reps and whatnot, but she was just the complete package. Physical, aggressive, had the ability to offload, big engine, dynamic. Was doing the 1% stuff as well. Look, having no Kendi Charrington and no Mahalia Murphy in the NRLW this week is unfortunate, but you're going to get to see a pretty special debut here for Riverlea, and well done to her, and well done to a number of those Tasha Gale girls who we'll get to shortly, because Tess McWilliams, part of that Team West Tuesday squad in the NRLW, and the Harvey Norman Women's Premiership squad is loaded up with Tasha Gale talent.
Yeah, and why don't we... we're about to go into Team List Tuesday, which is, of course, dominated by the NRLW with the NRL on a bye. There's still the lower grades with the Eels this weekend. Just before we do, John, who have we got in chat at the moment?
Plenty of regulars. A lot of people are having a lot of fun with potential signings and acquisitions for the NRL squad. And, some of the energy there is great. If you can land a Tino Fasu, a Malawi, or a Xavier Willison, then I'll be very happy, fellas. But Jonah Pezzard's also been mentioned there. But looking at the guys there, I see Joel, Gallagher, Chris. We've got Sandy Hunter, Chris Hill. We've always got multiple Chris's in chat. Dave's in there as well. Ronnie, Seb Bed has asked us a question about Maddie Hunter. We'll get the questions in a little bit, guys. Let's just pump through the news.
John,
first.
we got to be at strong odds to get at least one or two Chris's to the watch party.
See double out there. We've got leaps above from Lennox.
I think we hand out name tags and we're all
there's Mitch Andrews as well. So plenty of our regulars in here. Chat's pumping as well. Lots of good football discussion.
And by the way, I'm on board. I was asked the other day by Yoko who would be the dream signing for me. And I said, Tino, it would be the dream signing. It would just be the absolute cherry on the top of the recruitment cake. And then she asked, what about backs? Where would you go? I'd go for Mariner from the Broncos.
Well, funny you say that. I saw, was it Gallagher? Was it you, mate? He had a couple of great, one that I thought was another one. Oh, sorry. He went for Mariner. Was it Gallagher? Was it you, mate? I'm just trying to make sure I'm on top of this here. Because there was a mention of Mariner But also the other one I thought was interesting was Avarillo, because the Dolphins are insistent on signing superstar backs or expensive backs, and Avarillo was a player that could be forced out of their back line after the acquisition of Selwyn Cobbo. I think that Mariner or Scott, the Dolphin I was talking about, having an absolute brain fade. Well, Avarillo, Jesus.
John,
old timers right now. I know. That was a complete goldfish moment there. But yeah, Mariner, Avarillo,
You've
both
got no
would be.
excuse.
I don't.
About 30 years on you,
I've been full go since this afternoon. Teamless Tuesdays is always manic for me, and the club didn't do me any favors today. They got one team list out on Teamless Tuesday until I was prepping dinner. But yeah, Mariner, Avarillo, I'd love either of them. Both, yeah, as chat's saying, speed would be great pickups. Avarillo in particular too, because he gives you incredible coverage across the back line. I think he's primarily a centre these days, but you do get the ability to play him at fullback, wing, 5'8" in a pinch, although I think the Eels probably have other options there internally. I'd be all about that. Oh, and also in chat, we did have a new face here in Warren Thomas. Good to have you here, mate. Thanks for giving us a follow there and dropping by, as well as Sirik saying he's present as well, who had some great questions last podcast. So, yeah, chat is doing a great job here.
Well, he can't rest on his laurels. He'll have to come up with some more great questions this podcast as well.
No pressure, mate.
Okay, John, so I'll throw it to you now for Team List Tuesday, the NRLW team list.
Yeah, the Eels launching the NRLW on Thursday night, going out to, and look, is this a faux pas from Cronulla? I always call it Shark Park. They've now badged it Sharks Park, and I get that they are the Cronulla Sharks, but Sharks Park doesn't roll off the tongue as nice as Shark Park. But 7:45 p.m. kickoff out in the Shire. Eels
Sharkies Park,
Sharkies Parkies.
Sharkies Park.
Eels taking on the Sharks, and we'll deal with the Cronulla lineup when we do the preview podcast later this week. For the Eels, though, we've got 5 debutant 60s. Injuries forcing Steve Georgiades' hand in some capacity, but also a couple of new signings and a promotion from the Harvey Norman's team, who had a great year last year in the forwards, and we'll get to that. But Abby Church, freshly anointed as one of the co-captains of the squad 60s. She'll lead the team this week with no Mahalia Murphy. She's at fullback off the back of an incredible breakout year for her. Zali Faye notches her 25th NRLW game. She'll be on the wing opposite of new face Martha Mattielli. And then in the centres, a pair of young talents in Rory Owen and Lindsay Tui. Pretty exciting backline from 1 to 5 there. Returning in the halves this year is Cassie Toihiku and Rachel Pearson, who are looking to take their game to the next level as a combination after a good year last year. Elsie Albert, Ruben Charrington, and Brianna Eels are the starting front row. Obviously, Elsie and Ruben were pretty familiar faces from last year. Brianna we saw in the back row 60s. She's now moved into the front row, transitioning to more of she played lock 4, but now more of a prop middle role. And then your girl, Chloe Jackson, is on one edge. Paige Travis, our other new recruit, on the other. Riverly Arlo, we mentioned her just earlier in the show, makes her debut at lock forward. Fantastic story there, River. Go kill him, mate. And then we got Tanika Todd Hunter, Rashay Farmasuli, who was another debutante, Ruby Jean Kennard Ellis, and Fleur Jin, our 5th and final debutante. 5 of them, Craig. Fleur filling out the backline utility role with Tanika Todd Hunter, the dummy half utility role. So big minutes going to be tasked of Rashay and Ruby Jean here. Extended roster here, Mia Middleton, Tess McWilliams, we mentioned her outstanding Tasha Gale talent. Mahalia Murphy has been named in the extended roster as the co-captain, but I don't think she's available for selection. It's a reflection of the top 24, I think, and the injuries that the Eels have. But also Yasmin Baker and Chelsea Makira, who we saw in Harvey Norman's Women's Premiership last year, Craig.
Yeah. John, it is, as you said, missing some key players, but it's an exciting team to look forward to. Isn't it
crazy considering who we're missing, and they sit there and say, well, we're watching the debut of a spectacular talent, River Lee. Got a couple of, or a trio of new faces from signings across Martha, Paige, and Fleur, and then Rashay Farmasuli, who really made progress in leaps and bounds last year in reserve grade and has fought her way into a position to be one of the first picked on the interchange bench. So, yeah, exciting times.
Yeah. John, this has really snuck up upon us, hasn't it? Because it's there on this Thursday night. Like, we've got, including tonight, 2 sleeps, and then we've got the Eels round 1 appearance in the NRLW. It's a tough ask first up, and we will talk about it more in the preview podcast. which we'll record on Thursday morning and try to get out as early as we can, even on Thursday morning. But there was a little bit of rust from the Eels in that trial, which you'd come to expect. So what do you make of the actual team selection? It's as good as they can possibly manage, obviously. And as we said, they've got some exciting talent that's debuting. What's your without going too deep into it, without spoiling the preview podcast, what's your takes on the selections?
A lot of them sort of speak for themselves, don't they? You look at that back line, Church, Fay, Owen, Tui. They've been features. The halves are features. The front row that we've talked about there. But I do credit Steve Georgioulis for it might end up. I'm trying to frame this in a way. Cronulla are going to be a tough opponent. They play good football. They're a solid team with a number of rep players and some good talent across the park. This is going to be a difficult game. But Steve hasn't shied away from throwing some young faces and some new faces into the fray immediately. And I think that's a case of he is willing to risk the short-term pain for the, relatively speaking, long-term gain in the NRLW because it is a shorter season. And, yeah, I love a bold move because you play it safe and you get beaten and you've made – not only have you not made any progress on the ladder, you also made no progress long-term. And I think that's the situation that the Eels were facing against the Sharks. And instead, Steve has said, no, I'm going to back my young players. I'm going to back my new faces. I'm going to give them a chance to explode out of the blocks and put pressure on the other incumbents that are coming back and give themselves a chance to establish themselves. So, yeah, I like that. I mean, nothing – obviously, you have a Marv Mattielli coming across as a silver fern, I believe, is how they badged the representative players over there in New Zealand. And Page coming across with English representative pedigree. So they're to be expected. But to give Rivoli, to give Fleur Gin, to give Riche Falmasuli the shots that he's given them is a massive vote of confidence in the young talent in this squad. And I think that when you look at that leverage against experienced and senior players like Church, like Towie Hickle and Pearson, Albert and Ruben Cherrington even, I think there is a good balance of the seasoned and experienced heads that can help lead these young talents against the Cronulla Sharks on Thursday.
Look, absolutely, John, because you talked about the key players that are there. I'm also really excited to see what Martha Mattielli delivers, just based on what I saw in that trial. As I said, a little bit of an early error that was made, but after that, my goodness, she's going to be tough for opponents to handle out there on the wing. I'd say, given if she gets a fair slice of opportunities this year, she's going to be one that's going to be featuring on the try scorers list this season. John, let's...
Well, and we might have to pen a letter to the NRL, because if Martha has the sort of season that we're expecting of her, she's a rookie in rugby league, but won't be eligible for the Rookie of the Year gong, as what happened with Rory Owen, which I'm okay with if they were consistent. But we've got people saying that Mark Nawanga-Tawaze should be winning the Rookie of the Year over in the NRL. And that's not because he's in head-to-head competition with Isaiah Yongi. That is a bit of a vested interest, don't get me wrong. But if it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander. It's a great gender-based idiom here because it works on the male and female games here. At some point, we've got to say that the NRLW is big enough and old enough that the cross-code rookies, either they count or they don't count for male and female teams.
Yeah, don't start me. You really want to start me on that, John?
Because there's every chance we're going to lose Rookie of the Year 2 years in a row because of the rule, right? For Martha Mattiello, she actually comes from high-level rugby union, so I can understand why she would be on that exclusion list. But for Rory Owen, who came from Clubland Rugby, it's like, come on. But, and look, Mark Nawanga-Tawaze is having a fantastic year, and I'm happy to be celebrating him for Rookie of the Year. But if he can be celebrated, so should the girls from rugby union in the NRLW. I got a question about the NRLW from Warren, saying, can development players play from round one this year? Have rules changed? Look, we spoke with Steve Georgioulis about this on one of our podcasts a couple of months ago now, towards the back end of the junior representative campaigns. The NRLW development players are not conventional, at least based on the NRL, conventional development players. They have heavier restrictions placed on them on when they can be used. I believe that there need to be much stricter injury sort of backgrounds to other players to invoke the allocation to be used. So in that vein, you don't have the ability to use a development player from round one like you do in the NRL. You got to imagine they're going to be expanding that sooner rather than later based on what's happened in the NRL, because that was a positive move for the NRL, allowing development players to be able to be accessed by the teams from round one. But that does mean someone like Tess McWilliams, who I saw Chris getting pumped about in chat. Yeah, Chris would have a good idea about that one too. Tess was awesome this year. She can't play unless there is a dispensation or an allocation based on injuries and suspensions and other factors from the game's governing body. But yeah, Tess McWilliams, who is probably the premier dev player in that regard, we might see her at some point this year, but it will take some external influences to get her there.
Yeah, and we don't want to go down the path of wishing for injuries to players, to become
it's such a poison chalice, isn't it? Because you want to see a talent like Tess McWilliams be able to be in a position to play in NRLW this year, but you know that it's going to be a cursed moment because it means that there's been injuries and suspensions paving the way for her to get there. So phenomenal talent like River Lee went to another level in the back end of the Tasha Gale this year, and definitely, I mean, we announced her retention recently, and it's a player that you should jot down in your little book because she is a beast.
Yeah, sorry, John. I'm just getting a bit of information to help for the. You're about to read out the Harvey Norman women's team. So if you get on with that, and then I'll be able to pass on a bit of information.
Okay, good stuff. And so Thursday night is actually a double header out at Sharks Park. Eels taking on the Cronulla Sharks in the Harvey Norman Women's Premiership, which is, of course, reserve grade. And as we alluded to earlier in the podcast, this team loaded up with Tasha Gale graduates, starting at fullback with Dallas Graham-Wivel, who was the number one in the under-19s for the Eels. You got Ella Carlisle and Tegan Long, a couple of new faces there on the wings. Josie Lenars, is that a relation to Nicholas?
Now you've just preempted.
There we go. Yes, Nick Lenars, who we had a big soft spot for, who had a great year or two for us in the Jersey Flag. Is that sister? Josie?
Yeah. I was
so
just
Nick's sister there.
I was just messaging with Nick.
Nick's up in North Queensland, isn't he? Playing for the Blackhawks.
Yeah. So I'm just. So he's part of the Cowboys system up there.
The extended Cowboy squad there. So well done to Nick.
Yeah,
so he can push his way into their top roster there. But
he's just kindly answering messages from me. So and we always, as you said, we always looked forward watching Nick play and had a soft spot for him.
Real goer, yeah.
Because he was one of those work ethic players, in a way not unlike Riley Smith.
Yep.
I
think that's a pretty good comp, yeah.
Yeah, you absolutely knew what you were going to get. And he was also a player who could jump into dummy half as well as
dummy half, yep. And, speaking of siblings of former Eels, Kiana Takarangi, who we mentioned was did we mention on a podcast, or was it me texting you? I lose track of the week. We spotted her on socials in the dressing room with the girls coming into the club. So she's now been ratified as a reserve grader here for the Eels. Then in the halves, we've got Matisse Bettridge and Aaliyah Sufan. Not super familiar with Matisse Bettridge. I'm going to look at her this Thursday, obviously, but Aaliyah Sufan, a talented Tasha Gale half. So she's making the jump up here, looking to control this team, Craig. Then we mentioned her, Tess McWilliams starting in the front row alongside Chelsea Makira and Armani Lee Ava'e. McWilliams and Ava'e were in the Gale this year. Pair of very powerful bookends there. And Tess also had a fantastic rep run too for City versus Country, Craig. Chelsea Makira backing up from her campaign last year, playing dummy half. Now positioned as number 3, I guess, on the depth chart at dummy half, Craig, behind Ruben and Tanika. But a chance for her to put some pressure in the or starting from reserve grade. Then more Gale players, Alana O'Loughlin, Fontaine Tafua, a pair of edge players from the under-19s. O'Loughlin's a rough and rugged back rower, good post-contact player, and Fontaine Tafua probably bound to follow in the steps of Riverley Arlo sooner rather than later 60s. Part of that trio that they announced earlier in terms of retentions alongside River Lee and Tess McWilliams. A year younger, though. She is still got a year to go in terms of getting to where they are right now. Very talented edge back rower, though. Had a legendary try in the Tasha Gale Grand Final as well. The the one where she ran the better part of a length of the field at the end of the game and was exhausted when it was all said and done, but created a little bit of history. Locking out the scrum is Jessica Kennedy. Then on the interchange, Ashley Pottinger, another Pathways player. You've got Kalia Gray, another Tasha Gale player. Talia Falanico, another Pathways player from the Gale this year. And Liana Dimmick, another Parramatta Pathways player. Then the extended roster is Paige Knapp and Ava Jones. Ava also from the Tasha Gale squad this year. So dummy half utility there. Might get into the mix.
And I think I'm pretty sure Ava played in the trial too for the Harvey Norman game against the Bulldogs out at Kellyville. So, there, as I said, there were a lot of Tasha Gale girls that played in that particular trial. Now, they did unfortunately got a bit of a toweling in that game, but I don't think it was too unexpected given the number of players that were out of that team and actually playing, I think, in the some of them in the NRLW trial. But there's certainly, as you said, evidence of the Eels pathways in action with both the Harvey Norman team and the NRLW team. Seeing what is it, 3 players in the NRLW team who have really come through the pathways. 4, if you want to include Tess, who was new to the Eels club this year in the Tasha Gale. But if you have a look at the young players that have come through playing in the local Parramatta comp, so River Lee, Ruby Jean, they were both Toongabbie Tigers players.
Yes, Tigers, yep.
Yeah. So you've got that sort of talent that's coming through at the moment. And it's good because you can see the pathways in action. You can see the local talent being developed for NRLW. And given that the NRLW, from a Parramatta perspective, is such a new entity. So what was it, start of 22, that we got to see the Eels for the first time in the NRLW. And you have to remember as well that the Tasha Gale itself was a new entity, and a lot of the NRLW teams they didn't have graduates in those teams up until more recent years, filling up their NRLW teams. There'd been a lot of talent that had been playing in the Harvey Norman competition as their lead-in, had been playing in representative level rugby league. And when the NRLW started, it was really virtually like showcasing. It was, what's the word that I'm looking for? Not showcase, but just a 4-team competition. That wasn't a premiership. It was,
like you said, it was more of a showcase or feature match sort of what's the word? What is the word? Exhibition.
Exhibition, yeah. There was really exhibition matches.
It really was. And again, it speaks to how far the code has come so quickly and to not lose quality. So
absolutely. So, John, since you put up Team List Tuesday, there are lower grade team lists available, at least in the
except the flag. Let me just double check the flag. The flag, everyone's out apparently still. We haven't gotten an update there. So we do move across the male side of the docket. We got and I do want to preempt this because Chris, who does bring the good oil for some of these finer details, has mentioned that the Glebe-Bron Massey game has been moved to the 3:00 slot at Wentworth Park on Sunday, which is where the New South Wales Cup game is meant to be taking place, 60. So this is subject to change now. Let's wait and see where they end up. But the Eels are taking on the Roosters regardless of where they're playing in a match of 3v6 at some point.
Move it to Kellyville. Move it to Kellyville.
We'll take the board here, Roosters. Just take it to Kellyville. But yes, the Eels will take on the Roosters in some capacity at some place at some point on the weekend. And they've named the following team to take on the Tricolours. Arpa Twaddle, who is having himself a pretty fine year, will be at fullback. Liam Scolari on one wing with Samuel Louisu on the other. Araz Namva, who I saw, was it Joel? Were you talking about Araz in chat? Talking about he's a pretty plus athlete. He's having a good year in the New South Wales Cup. He works in the centres. He's got a very experienced partner, or I suppose opposite number here in Bowie Simonson, who makes his return
Dying
from...
on my hard cry, man.
Sorry about that.
Completed.
We got
Hey,
Simonson
who's
returning.
Bailey Simonson facing in the Roosters team? Have you had a look at who he's facing? Ben Johnson.
Ben Johnson. There you go. What are you doing, mate? Where is Ben? Ben in chat. He's not in chat tonight. So yeah, we got
Oh, that's what he's at training.
He's at training. He's actually at training. Yeah.
He's taken the field for the Roosters. This whole thing has been a masquerade by Ben. He's been masquerading as an Eels supporter. He's really a Roosters player on the rise.
He saw that we had AJ on and said, you know what? They've got a bit of a soft spot for the Tricolours fans right now. But yeah, Bowie Simonson returning from his knee injury, which is really, really good stuff. Puts the Eels in a good position in the backline, Craig, as he'll come into consideration for the game against the Penrith Panthers. Presumably he gets through this game, obviously, knock on wood, with full fitness. Then we've got, moving into the halves, Matty Hunter, who is another person I've seen feature in chat right now, talking about Twiddle and Hunter, who is also enjoying a very good year. He'll work alongside Ronald Volkman. It's a young spine, isn't it, Craig? Twiddle, Hunter, Volkman, and then Brendan Hans, who himself is no old player by any means. But then another returnee, Sam Tuivasa. How good is it to see the absolute bear of a young forward there in the front row alongside Tony Mattielli. Tyrese Lakini, another talented young player, will start on the edge. I keep saying it, but he's also having himself a good year. Charlie Geimer back on the edge here in this grade after not playing in the NRL last week. Dan Keel captain the team from lock forward. Then you've got Will Latu, Witter McGregor, Saxon Pryke, and Kane Kalache on the interchange. So a lot of beef there. Latu, Greg, Pryke, and Kalache. It's a good bench. Taking on the Roosters.
So I was just going to say, John, looking at that Parramatta lineup, and you've got Bailey Simonson coming back in this game, I'm not going to be surprised if Bailey plays not quite a full game, somewhere between half a game and a full game maybe, to make sure that he gets through the game and is available for selection for the Penrith game. And I'm just wondering then, look, because there's no backs on the bench, and I'm thinking maybe it'll be a case of someone like Charlie Geimer or Dan Keir even switching out to the centres and taking Bailey's spot at some point in the second half. So, sorry for interrupting there. John, you were talking about them taking on the Roosters team.
No, I was just, it feels like we played the Roosters very recently, and that is the case. We played them about a month ago. So the quirks of the draw here. I see Toby Rodwell's playing reserve grade alongside Chad Townsend. So you've got two players at the opposite ends of their careers there. Toby very talented.
Did they get us in that game a few weeks ago?
Good question. Let me just check out the draw for the Eels. Because we got them in the flag. That was the last game we won before the flag went on their downward tilt. But in the New South Wales Cup, the Eels played we beat them, right? Because that was the return game of the...
yeah, you're right. You're right. It was a return game of Sam Walker.
Before he ended up breaking his hand at training. And, yeah, the Eels end up... It was 28-16, but it was two late tries to Ben Johnson and Tom Rodwell. Mate, Ben Johnson, we're going to have some words with him when we see him at the watch party. But, yeah, it's Eels doing great stuff in this grade 60s. Really, really impressive stuff. Hung with the Warriors despite the catastrophic injury toll, then beat the Knights, and then beat last week the St. George Illawarra Dragons, who've been on an absolute tear in this grade, and they get some good troops back this week, which is really encouraging.
Yeah, and hopefully that's just the start of the troops coming back, because I would have said that the likes of Sam Tuivasa and Bailey Simonson are a week early, because I was expecting them back next week with the NRL. And if they've been named to actually play this week in this round, I see that as a round early. Obviously good as well to get some time under their belt before they are considered for selection for NRL. So fingers crossed for this weekend. Fingers crossed with given all that rain that's coming down in the areas along the coastline, it's probably going to be too much rain that will fall at Wentworth Park. They'll need to move it to Kellyville. It's all the sunshine that'll happen out in the west.
Many people are saying this as people want to talk about these days. Yes, it's the people want this, as PVL will talk about. The people want this.
Yeah, make it the people's choice. Get that game out there, and I'm sure there'll be lots of NRL players will turn up to cheer on their mates. Full house there at Kellyville for a game on Sunday. I think that's the way to go, with TCT covering it.
Yeah. And look, there is a Jersey Flegg game on, but we don't have a team list, guys. And what we do know is that the Flegg are in a bit of a rough spot with injuries and suspensions, plus the fact that, as we just mentioned in the New South Wales Cup team was just then, that they've got... Where is my New South Wales Cup team gone? I don't want to watch. I want to go to draws, please. The Cup have taken 1. 2, so we got Twiddle, Nanva, Hunter, who else is there? Tyrese Lakini 4, and Saxon Pryke 5. They've got 5 of their players up a couple of.
And then we have to throw in, we know there's been a couple of suspensions. Bamblett and Josiah Funaiuta, we believe, cop suspensions. There were injuries to the Destratus twins and also to Max Popo, so they haven't been available. I believe there's still some players in doubt from injuries over last week and the week before. It is really a case of they are going to have to really look at who they've got available. The extent to which they've had to dive into the depth in Jersey Flegg has been phenomenal. We saw it probably reach that tipping, like really a bad tipping point last week with that match, that result that went into the 60s against a team that was sitting lower than them on the ladder. You know that the team is doing it tough when they've been performing so well this season, and it was like they had nothing left in the tank last week. There was no other way to describe it. They couldn't go with the Dragons at all. They had no energy. They had no answers. It was a really tough match to watch. And it probably was harsh to say it was an embarrassing result, because I think when you were talking about the players that weren't available to play for them, and maybe a couple of players who are a little bit out of form as well, who they probably need a little bit more from. It was a tough result. But anyway, we'll talk more about that aspect in the preview podcast. Let's just jump back in now into the rest of the Eels news. And did the Eels provide an injury or suspension update for this week?
No. The last bit of news we have is the Riley Smith extension, which is obviously a fantastic thing to have on the news slot there from the Eels, but no injuries and judiciary updates, because of course there was a major charge to the Parramatta Eels out of that St. George loss.
Let's talk about that, John.
Kelma Tuolangi will be sidelined for 3 games, Craig. He's copped a grade 2 crusher charge for the sequence at the near end of that game. Was it on Jack DeBellin? I can't remember which Dragon it was on, but it sparked a bit of a flurry from both teams. Look, I am okay with Kelma getting charged, Craig. What I'm not okay with is Hamish Stewart not getting charged for... they literally put Will Penasini and Riley Smith combined for 5 weeks on the sidelines because of a dangerous throw, because the player lands on their neck, right? Hamish Stewart cuts out his high on his legs. He falls on the point of his shoulder and is lucky not to break his neck and got nothing for it, which is just classic MRC. But look, Kelma out for 3 weeks. It's a pretty big blow, because like Will Penasini the game before, that was probably Kelma's best game of the season. He was dominant. He was awesome against the Dragons, and then is now being sat down for nearly a month. And it's an untimely blow for the Parramatta Eels, Craig. Obviously, there are some provisions that Riles has. Jordan Samrani could come onto the edge. You got Charlie Geimer. You could kick Jack Williams out there too, with Sam Tuivasa looking to be back in the frame for the NRL selection. Again, providing he gets through this round unscathed. So there are options, but mate, we're just copying it left, right, and centre right now. Injuries, suspensions, bad luck in general.
Well, John, just running through some of the players that are full-time squad players who were out injured last week. So this is off the top of my head, and also looking at some of the stuff that the fellas put out on their Instagram. So obviously Sean Lane was out, Riley Smith was out. Then you also had Mitch Moses, Luca Moretti, Will Penasini, Sam Tuivasa, Hayes Dunster, Richie Penasini, Arthur Miller-Stephen, Jake Tungor, Bailey Simonson, Ryan Madison. That was last week, the players that were out. So the players coming back out of that group this week being Sam Tuivasa and Bailey Simonson. So that's 2 of all of those. But then you have to throw in there that Kelmer is now going to be unavailable for a period of, 3 matches?
3 matches, yeah.
So that's a significant number. That was 12 players that I read the name out for just then who were in that full-time squad. So you're really talking about a lot of pressure that's put not just on the NRL team, but we spoke about it before, the New South Wales Cup team. And that's why we're so pleased with how well the New South Wales Cup team is going, because everything has to flow up towards the NRL.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's why there's also that pressure that's on the Jersey Flag. And yes, the New South Wales Cup team does call on Ron Massey Cup players also, but it's when you've got players that are out across the grades, and that's the other problem as well, because the Jersey Flag, like some of those players that I just mentioned anyway that are part of the full-time squad, they would probably be expected to play New South Wales Cup at the moment, a number of those. But then you've got this big list of injured Jersey Flag players, so that New South Wales Cup can't call on all the Jersey Flag players that they'd want to call on. The Jersey Flag are without a heap of players anyway through injury and elevations. It is a big toll that's going on at the club at the moment, and there's just no way of avoiding some of these injuries. So it's been, we keep looking at it from season to season saying it's got to be a better year next year in terms of injuries. And this year, it hasn't been a better year in terms of injuries, and it's probably been a worse year in terms of suspensions. It's starting to feel like 2023 in terms of suspensions. It's far too many to be without players. Just in these last 2 weeks, we've lost players for, 8 weeks? 3 weeks, 3 weeks, 2 weeks.
Yep.
And that's besides the suspensions that happened in the New South Wales Rugby League.
We don't get documented, exactly, yeah.
Tony Mattelielli. And they were, each of those 2 players had 2 separate suspensions as well. Yeah. So they were suspended and then came back, and then I think had another couple of suspensions on top of that. So it's just been a tough year with that. Is that the fault of the players? Well, obviously you have to say,
in some capacity it is. Absolutely. You've got to own it.
They're doing something wrong. But there has also been a heavy hand dealt to the Eels in those decisions. A heavy bastard hand dealt to the Eels in those decisions. So anyway, rather than going off the deep end again, mate, we'll press ahead. Final takes on that game against the Dragons. Now that the dust has settled, we've both calmed down a little bit from the instant reaction.
Yeah, look.
What's your take on your overall take on that game?
It is frustrating that the team still has the capacity to play the way they did in the first 40 minutes. That is something that is clearly an ongoing process to eradicate from our psyche, from our mindset, from our approach. But we are a young team. We are a team that is also, as you just mentioned, ravaged by injuries and suspensions. We are nowhere near full strength, which exacerbates the potential for something like that to happen. The Dragons came out of the bye roaring. They played their best football for a good month or so. And we struggled to go with them, at least defensively, because I think offensively we didn't play bad football. but we were too soft and too brittle in defense. And throughout this last 2 months, Craig, our defensive structures have been almost spot on, scenario to scenario, play to play, and where it has broken down has been an individual lapse, which is essentially just football, right? I think for the first time in over 2 months, we saw players not working to the systems, and Dragons were able to take advantage of that. So that was frustrating. Didn't like seeing that. What I did like was the fact that we were down a massive hole, 22 points at Oranges. What was it, 26-4? And the boys came out and absolutely ripped in. They put themselves in a position where it took a controversial call to stop them from winning. And yes, I say this knowing that they could have been in a position to win regardless of that controversial call if they'd been better in the first half. But the fact they got to 26-20 and had scored the game-tying try, and a try that had the way that game was playing, the Eels going to win, and I think they win by about 2 tries, Craig, if that is called, if that's green lit. The Dragons were reeling. The Eels had them just swamped. But the touch he makes the call, was he out? Maybe. There is literally that much in it. Like that much in it. It was Jared Haynes' State of Origin in, was it 09? 2010? I can't remember which year it was. Or maybe it was in before that. Crazy margin there. And yeah, it went against the Parramatta Eels. Then Zach Lomax throws the unfortunate offload after some great sequence of play, starting with Kelma to Olangi, and the Dragons go on to win it. So very frustrating loss. Really didn't like the first half, obviously. Captain Obvious right here. And I think that will be a real sticking point for the coaching staff, the fact that the Eels came out and played so poorly and went away from the systems. But again, in round one, which is probably the best analogous scenario to this, and I know it's the Melbourne Storm aren't the St. George Illawarra Dragons. I'm not trying to conflate the two. But we had a similarly poor start, especially in defense. We went on to get rolled by 50, 60 points. And that was on the table here. And this time they rolled up their sleeves and they got with the task, and the Dragons, they were that close to being beaten and beaten well, and look, St. George had their own issues that game. They got rolled by injuries. So it wasn't a clean game in that regard. But I do like the fact that they said, no, we're not going to settle for getting our asses kicked. We're actually going to turn up and play in the second half. And didn't get the win, and that really stings in the context of chasing the 8. But it also shows the growth of the team, because even though they had that nightmare start, they had the mental resolve to haul themselves out of that hole.
Yeah. John, I look back at it now, and it's interesting you drew an analogy between that and the game against the Storm. I can see where you would see that similarly, because the Storm really tore the Eels to shreds. And what happened in that game against the Dragons, when I look back on it, I think I was trying to find the right way to describe the Eels' performance, and I said it wasn't a case of not turning up. They just weren't on their game. And then as I watched the highlights and had to think a bit more about it, I thought it was probably a case of not turning up with either intensity or intent in that first half. It was missing both of those factors, and it was missing with too many players. It looked like a group of strangers out there on the field.
Yeah.
And then you saw them be able to flick the switch and be a completely different team in the second half. But our issue this season has been first halves that haven't been what they should be. I've lost count of the number of first halves that we've had where I've felt that we've left points out on the board, out on the field, where we allow that first try to be scored against us. We're allowing other teams to get a better start than us. And if there's one area where I'm desperate for Jason Rolls and the coaches to improve our team, it's in that first half. Yeah, because it's just not good enough at the moment. And we understand that it's a developing team, and we can see all the green shoots that Jason Rolls talks about. And we know that there are better times ahead. We can see what he's shaping as a team. But right now, where we want games won and where games should be won, we're either making our job harder in the first half, or we're making our job impossible in the first half.
Exactly. We're constantly chasing the scoreboard. Even if it's only 6 points, it just adds that degree of pressure to a team that is young and again, impacted by injury and suspension, missing their best player in Mitchell Moses, the guy that can take control of the games in those close contests. So I agree. The single biggest area of improvement for us right now would be scoring first more consistently, putting pressure on the scoreboard and our opposition far more consistently. And even if it came out to a 50-50 rate or even like 45-55, that would be a serious improvement of where we are right now. We are, I think we mentioned the Instant Reaction podcast is like 2 times we've scored first this year, maybe 3. It's crazy. And it's not for a lack of going close. We've seen multiple games recently where the Eels could have scored first. The Gold Coast Titans had that comical sequence of Kelmer where the ball just bounced away from him, which led to the Titans going down the field and scoring as well. So it's like the football gods have been particularly spiteful right now. Yeah,
absolutely. Okay, John, that brings us to intermission.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
What have you got in store for us this week?
Look, it's the girls' week, isn't it? Launch of the NRLW, Harvey Norman Women's Premiership. The NRL's on a bye, so I had a few thoughts here about which way I wanted to go. There's a couple of more modern artists, I suppose, are big names these days, but if I was going to go for girls and whatnot, for the ladies, I'd go for the queen of pop music, a bit of Madonna, and got one of my favourite ones, which is actually it's a sample of ABBA, I believe, in Hang Up, or Hung Up? Hang Up, Hung Up? There we go, let's go a bit of Madonna. Well, I do know what to do. Make sure you watch the NRLW on Thursday night.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those people who are enjoying John's eclectic musical taste that shines through every week, just start the petition for John to be part of the entertainment at Combank Stadium. I'm sure he could be set up maybe in another stand beside DJ K-Time there at the stadium, and they'll go with competing beats. I'm sure it'll be that. You're talking about bring back the crowds, John. That's going to bring that's going to bring
out the tip sheet playlist, and they'll be vibing all game.
Yeah. That's it, mate. Okay, quick Origin discussion. I don't want to go too deep in it, and the reason I don't want to go too deep is I think the mainstream media is really covering it more than enough. It's rightly, it dominates what's being discussed up to the game itself right now. Really, what I'm interested in is, John, who do you think wins and why?
Look, it's a New South Wales home game. Queensland have the momentum from the win, but I think New South Wales have a bit of momentum out of the comeback in game 2, where they put themselves in not too dissimilar from what we saw from the Eels and the Dragons, right? Really awful first half, not as bad as the Eels first half, but pretty ordinary. And then they managed to claw their way back into the contest and fall just short. I think the Blues, they've got a lot of stability in the roster. I think it is essentially the same 17, right? It is the same 17,
yes.
I think, except for the potential for Jacob Kiraz to come onto the wing if there's something wrong with Brian To'o in the run to next Wednesday. Versus the Maroons, who in classic Maroons fashions, they've just made some wild card selections. There is one that I am concerned about because I thought they were going to go for Reece Walsh, which I thought was the weaker option at fullback, and they've gone for the Hammer instead, and I don't like that. I think that's a concern. I think that the Hammer is the scariest footballer they have in their backline, and he's been quarantined to one edge for most of the game, most of the series so far, and his ability to let pop up and sort of spook the team on both sides is going to be a real concern, and he'll have a lot more attacking opportunities. I think he could be a real game breaker for the Maroons. Going to back the Blues, though, of course.
John, you mentioned the Hammer. watching that game between the Dolphins and Souths last week. And when that ball went to the hammer in the middle of the field, and I immediately exclaimed, watching it, look out. He looked like he's covered, but you knew he wasn't. You knew that he didn't have a straight line of defence in front of him. It was scattered, defended because of the circumstances under which the ball fell to him. And just away with consummate ease, he weaved his way through defenders, and then next thing he's in the clear and he's just coasting, just looking around like I'm out for a Sunday stroll. Yeah, I'm running away from players, but really I'm just having a stroll. And as you said, he's probably the most dangerous footballer. I think he's the most dangerous footballer on the planet, because that level of speed and the vision that he seems to have with his own running. I'm not talking about vision in terms of managing games or putting others into spaces.
Pure heads up individual, seeing the flow of the game to run, isn't it? Like, he is a special.
You can imagine if he's some sort of machine, right? And the ball falls into his hands and there's some spaces, and it's like you can see it computes, and he's worked out this. You can see this highlighted path that he's going to take. If it came up on the screen and you could see what was running through his mind, you'd see, okay, I'm going to go here, and you just watch him trek there. It just feels like it's not natural. He makes it look natural, but it can't be that easy. It can't be that natural, but it is. So yes, he's the concern. But I look at that Queensland team, John, and I know it's happened in the past, and it's the Blues have been bitten so many times, but I'm going to say it. I'm looking at that Queensland team, and to me, there are players in that team that aren't Origin players in terms of the elite footballers. They've picked players that they believe will do the job for Queensland. It's worked for them in the past. I don't think they will get the job done against this New South Wales team. And I'm going to tip my hat to the Panthers, because if you look at the number of players in the New South Wales team that have a background at the Penrith Panthers, it's actually scary, because you think to yourself, if something like a salary cap didn't exist, and they were able to keep whoever they wanted, they would never have been beaten for about a decade. And who knows, they might go for a very long time yet, because they're going on. They've started what looks like a frighteningly good run at the moment, and unfortunately, we're having to play them twice.
we kickstarted
where they picked up
caught their best form against us, and we get them.
Yeah, they've built on it. They played their best game of the season against us. It was like all of a sudden 2024 had arrived back when they played us, and then they built on that each week since then, so that by the next time that we play them, they'll be even a little step better, and we're probably going to be a number of players reduced. We could be nasty and hope for Nathan Cleary to be in such a situation that they're forced to rest him for his next game. I think they probably should. Just, completely impartial, rest him, Ivan. You'll be able to afford it. You're back in the 8. You're cruising, mate. You've got enough players there. The Eels have got plenty out. Just rest, Nathan.
Go back to your resting protocols. Come on.
Go on, just rest him. Yeah. Maybe rest Dylan Edwards as well.
Yeah, Zio,
yeah, their workload's far
too many high level games.
Yeah. We're no chance of getting you, Ivan. Just
never mind that we played you 2 for now last time when you played your best football.
And just think, you beat the Warriors when you rested all those players. It's just little old us.
Exactly.
Parramatta.
Exactly.
Nothing
We've got to get the
worry
messaging
about.
out there.
Yeah.
Exactly. We know that Ivan Cleary, he's mentioned the Cumberland Throw in post-match press conferences.
Oh, he can't help but mention the Cumberland throw.
He's mentioned the Cumberland throw and the capacity of the tackle, of course, and presses before.
No, he wasn't. He was asked. He was asked what his little secret indulgence was, and he said the Cumberland throw. He can't help
when
it.
he's scouting the Parramatta Eels, he always looks at TCT. That's true.
Absolutely. When he wants some real takes about
take a memo from the two best Parramatta insiders. Clearly the two best Parramatta insiders.
Yes, that's it. Okay, let's move on from talking about one coach just then, Cleary, to Mr. World Affairs, Anthony Seibold. Who would have expected that a rugby league presser with a coach would turn into SBS World News? Because that's what we got from Anthony Seibold. He was asked about pressure.
Reflective of where he is with his position in Manly, I don't know. I mean, they got the win, right? But it was a pretty big bludger against the West Tigers. I don't know. Seibold's always been a bit of an odd character for mine. Like not what like there are crazy coaches like Des Hasler, who was actually on the run sheet too, by the way. But yeah, I don't know. Where did that come from, mate? Like I know that the world's a messed up place right now, and there's a lot of crazy stuff happening outside of Australia.
Yeah, what he's tried to do, he's tried to emulate the words of Keith Miller, I think it was the legendary cricketer, who, when asked after a particular Test match where there was a bit of pressure on him, he was asked about that pressure, and he's because he was a fighter in the he flew
plane, yeah.
He flew planes in World War II.
Correct.
And he was asked about the pressure in that game, and he said having some Messerschmitts on your tail up there in the skies, that's what pressure's about.
A bit more gravity when it comes from an active World War II participant in Keith Miller, who was also a legend at his position in the game of cricket as well, versus Anthony Seibold, who is on the hot seat at Manly, and his biggest issue is whether he's going to play Tom Tebojevic at fullback or at centre.
Yes.
But, yeah. I respect the effort to deflect there, Siebes. Obviously, it's a very tough position he's in right now, chasing wins without losses, because it feels like the moment he has a loss, they're going to maybe flip him. But Manly, they did enough to get the win, but geez, I wouldn't say they came out of that game with a huge amount of confidence. Leo Hopewadi struggling in his first... he's played fullback before, but never over Tom Tebojevic, right? And I think he was a bit nervous there. Although I do rate Hopewadi very highly. I think he's a similar player to Azara Yongi in terms of the ability to play football. So that would be, again, I spoke about it before, I think Manly's making the right move long term, which I don't like. But yeah, they've still got plenty of stuff to figure out there on the Northern Beaches.
John, if you look at Manly, I think they do a very good job of clinging on to being a competitive and viable club. And the reason that I say that is they have private ownership, and I think the owner spends a lot of time out of the country. They struggle in the lower grades. They don't set the world alight in their pathways. It's not the worst junior league in the world, but it's not massive.
Yeah.
They don't have, and because they have private ownership, they don't have a leagues club who are able to tip in support for the club. And their home ground is an open park during the week. I look at it and I go, you know what? In the scheme of things, like in all seriousness, they own the northern side of Sydney as a rugby league entity. And the NRL, from that perspective, probably needs them. But if you were talking about, if you picked a club, or you were picking clubs, plural, who might struggle in the future, for various circumstances, be it financial, be it from a playing roster perspective, they might be one of the clubs that you'd tick and say they could be a worry in terms of their viability.
Yeah.
The Sharks are another one that I see there, not because, again, they do particularly well in terms of being consistent, and they have a junior league that seems to do well. But in terms of what's happening with their club and the facilities there, you go, they can't cater for more than 11,000 people at their home games. How do you grow as a franchise?
And
if
look, it comes back to the NRL's love affair of suburban grounds and the romance of the 60s, 70s, and 80s, I guess. And
did the NRL buy their ground from them?
This is something that I've tripped up on before. I think the NRL has like a stake, I believe, in Shark Park.
Is it a stake in the ground? Is it a stake in the
development
hotel there? I'm not sure, but the thing is, if you look at that ground, there isn't this. They don't have the capacity to be any bigger. Like, they can't develop it. They've got development all around it. They've got a road right on the back of one grandstand at, I think that'd be what, the eastern, no, it wouldn't be east-west. It must be like the north end. Anyway, but the road there's like, it's right behind the stand.
Yeah.
Then at the opposite end, you've got the mangroves.
Yeah, from the
wetland right at the back of the hill. So they're not going to be able to make that any bigger. Then you've got the actual leagues club development that sits on the back of the grandstand on one side, and then on the other side, I can't remember whether it's a shopping centre or whatever it is, or residential development and a road. So they've got no room to expand on the other side. Like, maybe they could just go up, but no one's ever talked about any future development down there. Do they forever have a ground that will only hold 11 to 12,000 people, and that's okay with the NRL?
After the development, like the actual development, not like a story development, the literal building development that they've done there, how can they justify getting a secondary development now? I don't know. It's
well, they couldn't. I mean, that had always been their ground, and they wanted funding to build a better ground, but now they don't have the space there to make it bigger in terms of capacity. They could make it better in terms of the facilities, but they're not going to get more people there. And you can't see, like, they've got the Bulldogs play at a venue which can hold about 5 to 6 times the number of people. No, sorry, more than that. They're getting 5 to 6 times.
Yeah, when they've still got the overhead for another 15,000 people, exactly.
Yep. Yeah. So how they wouldn't have the capacity for the same amount of corporate dollars. They're not getting. It must cost them to stage home games if they only get an average of 10 or 11,000 people there, or that would be the best that they can get. So anyway, we don't want to spend too long on that, but they are a club that's a little bit under pressure at the moment because they're on a slide. There's other clubs that are on a slide as well. The Titans have probably been on the biggest slide, but they're certainly joined by the Tigers and the Bunnies. So a question I'll pose to you, John, are the Tigers were the media darlings at the start of the season. They were talking them up that they'd be playing finals football. This is all just across the first 4 or 5 rounds as if it was going to be indicative of their season. They are going downhill fast at the moment. They may end up being away from the spoon, but they might just as easily collect the spoon now. Are they genuine spoon contenders, John? And secondly, do you think Benji can coach?
Good questions. Look, I think the spoon, and this does include Parramatta still, is very much a wide open field. Just how compressed the ladder is, I don't think you can spin it any other way. And the Gold Coast Titans, I think they are the front runners, but the Tigers are legitimately on a slide, as you put it, 60s. They are struggling. They played terrible football on the weekend. They've got massive holes of dummy half now, with Appy knocked out, or had a Cat 1 concussion, and now missing this coming week. So that's a big toll on the team there. But also just like you said, they started with a bit of I suppose spunk and pizzazz, but then quickly they came back to reality that the NRL, you can't play a couple of good games and expect that to carry you through the season. They're getting found out, and there's talks of, I don't know how much you put into it, but there's increasing whispers of a boys' club there, isn't there? With some of the recruits they got there, and the power that they hold with the coach, which time is a flat circle, isn't it? Like, this is Benji Marshall and Robbie Farah all over again, except now it's Jerome Luai and Avi Coruscant and company. If the rumours are to be believed, and again, I'm saying this not getting near completely buying in, but it's certainly there is. If you were putting together the pieces of the puzzle and connecting dots, there is at least an argument to be made that they have a lot of power there, in light of what happened with Locke and Galvin. And there needs to be. I'm okay if Benji continued to coach the West Tigers as a player, a person with a vested interest in the Parramatta Eels, a rival. I'm completely fine with him coaching the Tigers. But if you're being looking at this with a neutral scope and taking away the blue and gold and the West Tigers, beef there, Benji Marshall does have significant question marks about how he handles coaching. And I keep hearing in the media, because Benji's obviously a very popular figure in the game, and that's completely separate from him being a coach, right? Well, it should be completely separate from him being a coach.
Of course.
It is influencing the opinion of the media, because throughout the Lachlan Galvin saga, all you heard was, why would he want to lead the West Tigers when he's got Benji Marshall coaching him, who could do so much for him as a coach, as a half, one of the greatest halves of his time in the NRL. Benji Marshall wasn't one of the greatest halves of his time in the NRL. He was one of the most exciting halves of his time in the NRL, but he is not up there with Jonathan Thurston and Cooper Cronk and Andrew Johns and more recently Nathan Cleary. Very, very fun to watch, but he won one premiership and then had a lot of ebbs and flows of his career, right? He got chased out of the code because he bust out the Tigers, came back and had to work as a Dragon and then a South Sydney Rabbitoh and back to the Tigers.
And the Broncos.
And the Broncos too, you're right, he was at the Broncos, he bounced around. So people in the media, at least, they're colouring his ability to coach on the basis of how fun he was to watch as a player and how that means he must be a great coach. He hasn't really shown much to show he's a great coach. And the West Tigers chalice is a very, very bad one to drink from right now in terms of the talent and the off-field issues. So that's also bogging him down, don't get me wrong. But I can't sit here and say I've seen enough from him to suggest that he will be a good NRL coach, at least right now. And maybe the Tigers persist with him and maybe he does show that he can coach. But from what we're seeing this season, the Tigers aren't really making any progress.
Yeah, and I think that's probably a fair call. Do you think the Titans are likely to part ways with Desi Hasler?
Well, this is I don't think there's a right or wrong. I mean, there are wrong calls. I don't know there's a right call. Because like Brisbane, who have admittedly turned things around a little bit, but there's an element of the player roster at the Titans and how much power they wield versus the coaches there and who they've run through. But I also look at the coaches that they've had, and I can't really say that any of them are men that the Titans should have been backing over the player group, but they've also empowered the playing group too much, it feels like. And I don't think Des Housel's the right guy for him, but they get rid of Des, and what do? I don't know. They've got to go out there and find a guy who can turn it around. And the Gold Coast, the Gold Coast should be a much better club than it is, right? But across, not just as the Titans, across its various iterations, across all the decades that they've been in the NRL and the ARL, they've just been consistent underachievers. And strategically, the NRL need to have the Gold Coast, and I want the Gold Coast to be a relevant franchise, but they can't get it right. And saying this as a Parramatta fan who's had plenty of missteps in our club too, don't get me wrong. But yeah, I think the Titans do part ways with Des 60s. I think that the friction between him and his player group is becoming quite palpable, at least from what we're seeing in the media.
I hope he sticks around.
I mean,
and players like Tina.
Again, it's a Benji situation. As a Parramatta fan, I'm completely fine with Des sticking around and rolling up the playing group and maybe opening up some opportunities for teams to sneak in there and sign his players. But when push comes to shove, I think the Titans will fall the way of the playing group. And it's not even about falling away the playing group here, I guess, here, because I just feel like Des is at that point in his career where was a great coach for a long time. Like, he legitimately was an excellent coach. Took that Manly squad to multiple premierships, playing some really good football, and then went to the Dogs and took a very mediocre roster to a grand final. Like, that Dogs roster wasn't great. And then I think he got a little bit lost in the sauce, and his esoteric ways either got figured out or got old in the NRL, because the game does evolve and update and change. And especially in the six again era, where we've seen a number of coaches struggle to update their methodology, I feel like Des is probably one of them. And his old school, because he does strike me as an old school, but also weird, like, with the stuff with the calves bite at Manly and whatnot. He blends old school with just bizarre stuff, and the
Well, John,
here's
here's a question for you. If you go back to when he was first coaching at Manly and listen to any presses or interviews with him, was he the mad professor type that he likes to, or that he seems to portray now? When you listen to him talk, and he's like, he was rambling and
much more football savvy back then. Yeah, I think if you go back and actually listen to some of the stuff he was talking about, much more cluey about how to play the game and the best ways to attack the opposition and how to structure his teams and whatnot. And then maybe it's a function of just getting older. Maybe it's a function of just... Is
he cultivating an image? That,
yeah, maybe it's also a function of that. But either way, is this his last stop, 60s, I suppose? If he gets cut from the Titans, where does he land?
It has to be. It has to be. Oh, maybe there's a role for him as an assistant coach or as some sort of mentor / football manager, something in the game. But I think the days as head coach, if he's sacked by the Titans, are probably over for him. Now, John, before we get into the last part of our podcast with NRL news, which is basically the injuries and signings that are going on across the NRL, have we got any questions from our chat group there?
Well, chat's preempted a bit of the stuff with the Newcastle news, but we'll get to that shortly. Matthew Spalding would like to have Murata Niokore back in the blue and gold. He'd be a great fit, but he did go to New Zealand because of family reasons, I believe. So there was a rumour that they might be forced to release him because of cap pressure with the looming re-signings of a number of key players, including Luke Metcalf, who is on the news docket for unfortunate reasons. But chat, what else we got here? A bit of talk about the Tigers 4-peat, Jamie. Yeah, good point. The Tigers are on a 3-peat right now, chasing that Penrith reverse or inverse success. If they do win the spoon, it would be a 4-peat. Somehow we got to talk about the grand final team and Jake Arthur being there. I have no idea. People complaining about Brad Arthur selections. What's new? We had some fun about Nathan Cleary, his chin and his groin, because of how much coverage we've been getting about the groin and the groin watch. People want Mitchell Moses to retire from rep football. That's been a bit of a theme this year too, with all the injuries. People having fun with your suggestion about me being part of the DJ crew at CommBank. We got talk about how much Tino would be worth. I think we had a range of values from $1 to $1.3 million, which is hopefully if we get to a point where there's a bit more robust and corporeal discussion about Tino coming through the media, we can get to actual figures, because that would be a fun discussion.
Did you just throw corporeal out there, John?
Yes.
You just threw corporeal out there in a Parramatta footy podcast.
So we are
just never
say that TCT doesn't help you with your lexicon or whatever it is, your vocabulary and your tool bag of words. But there were questions way back at the start. Oh my God, you guys have talked so much. Chat again going. going good. So we've had some questions about the size of Arpa Twiddle and Matthew Hunter, and sort of where does that leave them in the context of senior football. I would say they're both pretty good size, right? 60s. Like Arpa, the player I compare Arpa to in terms of his skill set is Adam Dwahi, but Adam Dwahi is a lot bigger, I think. I think Dwahi's 190. I think Arpa would be 180 something. Like, he's not small, but he's also not as...
Arpa, I'm just trying to think the opportunities I've had to speak to him. He'd be a bit taller than me, John.
Well, then he's comfortably 180 then if he's taller than you, yeah. So he's not a small.
I'm like about 186, yeah. John.
He's not a small unit, Arpa, so maybe he's close to Adam Dwyer, Fort, which would be great for the physique. And Matty Hunter, he's a rangy 5'8". He's still got a bit of room to put on some kilos. He's not skinny, but he's also not like fully grown yet. But he'd be pretty comfortable in the mid 180s, I'd say. He feels pretty tall.
Yeah, so as you said, he's still relatively young. I don't know whether he's 20 or 21 this year because it's his second year with the Eels in Flegg. So he's still Flegg eligible at the moment, which means he could be up to 21 years of age at the moment. So
Mitchie's got a serious question in regards to some of the rumours that have been swirling out of the media, asking, has Lane retired, boys, as reported? I think there was a line in the Daily Telegraph this week about Sean Lane set to ratify his retirement. That is something that we are monitoring. I think there's probably some credence to that rumour, 60s, but it's not.
Yeah, I'm not gonna.
It's not something we can really comment on much more than that beyond like when the club does, in any capacity, make an announcement about Lane either returning to football or moving on.
Yeah, I mean, if there's stuff out there about him retiring, we're not going to get into it, but we're not going to argue with it.
Yeah,
how's that?
Yeah,
how's that for where we sit with it? And when I say not going to argue, we're not talking about the decision. We're not going to argue with the mail.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Right. Wait, what's happened with Ryan Madison? I'm lost of chat. So chat saying up was about 186. Got some speculation here. Has he been re-signed up? Sorry, I'm trying to keep on top of chat. Arpa's like Dylan Edwards. That's from Chris. I can say that a little bit. I think with my comparison with Dwahi is about the positional versatility. He's a player that's shown he can pop up at 5'8", fullback. Wouldn't be surprised if he held his own in the centres.
Well, John, that's if I can just jump in there. I've been getting a lot of messages on socials, people sending DMs with questions about Arpa and asking whether he could possibly be a centre. Could centre be his debut position? Should the Eels look at playing him there in New South Wales Cup instead of fullback if that is the best option for him going forward, etc. Much like with people talking about
Joe Ash was another one that got those questions earlier
should
in the
have
year.
been playing 5'8".
Very interesting players for that reason.
Yeah. So my take on that is, I think Arpa plays his best football at fullback. I think he's shining at the moment because his game suits fullback. He's a player that has been more than capable at 5'8", because it's my understanding that was his background before he came to the Eels, and the Eels turned him into a fullback. Now, I could be wrong there, but that was just the background that I had about him from years ago. That's what I remember from when he joined the club, that was what we were told his background was.
Yep.
And, of course, he was originally from New Zealand, but we came to the Eels via Queensland.
Yep.
As I remember. As for playing centre, like John, I think he could more than capably play centre. So the question really is, are the Eels and Arpa prepared to invest time in a positional change, or would he fit nicely into the depth charts if Joe Ash is transitioning to a 5'8" position and they need a fullback?
He becomes the Joe Ash fullback / utility role player. Yeah,
Yes.
I could see that. Yeah.
Yeah, next cab off the rank, if you had an Isaiah Iongi injured next year, that the player called up would be Harper.
I like that.
And much the same in a way with Matty Hunter. A little bit more complex because you have players in front of him in the halves who are a little bit older, not ancient. They're not ancient by any means, Ronald Volkman and Dean Hawkins.
Yeah.
But you also have players in those two who have that little bit of NRL experience, not a huge amount, because in the case of Volkman, injury has interrupted his career. And in the case of Dean Hawkins, opportunity hasn't been there really to shine until this year. He's arguably played by far his best NRL football playing at halfback for Parramatta. However, so Matty Hunter, where's his future? Well, I think it will be interesting because they're looking at Joash as the potential 5'8" partner, but then you've got in reserve grade Dean Hawkins and Ronald Volkman should be the next cab off the rank. So where does Matty Hunter fit in when he's smashing it, when he's coming up into New South Wales Cup? I think it's an interesting dilemma for the club going forward. Yeah. And you look at that and you go, are any of them genuine options to play in the halves alongside Moses? And you'd probably have to say Joash it looks like he's been the one groomed. You could say Dean Hawkins could probably easily play in the halves alongside Mitch Moses. You could say probably Ronnie Volkman could play in the halves alongside Moses. And then you'd go, Matty Hunter might just be a talent. And you would hate for Parramatta to lose him, but maybe that ends up being the case because that pathway to first grade could be a little bit more crowded than he'd want.
And you've got, obviously, behind Matty Hunter, a pair of very talented young halves in Fletcher and Talatona as well. So it's a real puzzle for Riles, and not just Riles, but the coaching levels down below that to juggle and figure out. But there is a reason why Jason Riles has been pretty vocal about being content, like being willing to wait and see what the market throws out as far as special number sixes, because internally he does have options. And yeah, Matty Hunter part of that equation there. Oh, Ben Johnson's back from training. He's popped in the chat with a question for us. How was the Roosters training, mate? And since you've been out, you might not recognise the in-joke here, but he says, can we talk about Jared Sutton having players making contact with him 3 weeks in a row? Bloke is completely out of his depth now. Yeah, that is an issue. That is an issue. The referees putting themselves in unfortunate position, 60s. Dylan Brown felt the wrath of the MRC because of it. Heath Mason also. Was the third one Moses Leota? Was he in that game? Leota was not charged for his contact, but Mason and Brown were.
So why was Leota not charged?
What was the context of I only know that Leota ran into a referee. I don't know the context. I saw the game, but not that incident. So, I don't know. Is it the Penrith buff? Is it the got the right jersey on? I don't know.
Yeah, well, I think first of all, Ben has got a legitimate question first up. If you've got different incidents involving contact with referee, but you've got the same referee, then you think something's happening there. Like, is his spatial awareness a bit of a problem? His peripheral vision? His game sense? What's going on there? So, John, how about we launch into quickly, first of all, the injuries and then a little bit of signing news. So I'll let you run through those.
Yeah, some shocking injuries from the weekend, Craig. I was compiling this list and I missed one with Cody Nikorima, also part of the contingent of seriously injured players, and mostly playmakers too. Big one, though, out of that game on the weekend where the Warriors got done in by the Broncos, Luke Metcalf, ACL, one of the presumptive front runners and maybe even the presumptive favourite for the Dalian medal has blown his knee out for the season, Craig. Massive blow for the
I
Warriors.
didn't have money on him, John.
No,
you can't
it wasn't a
Dalian
60s mockies. Just pure unfortunate stuff. He got absolutely leveled by Brandon Piakura. It was a hit off the ball, but I felt it was legal. But there was no contact of the knees. He just got him across the chest, and then he somehow managed to do his ACL out of it. It was crazy stuff. Really unfortunate. Like, he's been one of the great stories for the Warriors this year, playing terrific football. Was an outside chance of being called into Blues camp, honestly. And that they've gone with Katoa as part of the Blues experience. Also, Jack Williams, by the way, chat mentioned that. Jack Williams, not part of the official squad, but called into camp to help run a pose, which is a great experience for him. And we didn't mention it, but Jermaine Hopgood, part of the bold set of calls from Billy Slater, part of that extended Queensland squad. So hopefully that can kickstart Jermaine's season and get him back to his best. Origin football took his best away from him in the 60s, so it's only fair that he gives it back this year after that back injury from getting destroyed by Liam Martin. But Liam Martin, Luke Metcalf, the head story there, but they also lose Charles Nickel-Cockstar for a month. And then we've got some hamstrings. I mentioned Cody Nikarima. He's out for 6 weeks, I believe. Not even the worst hamstring of the round. Poor Suafa'alongo. Did you see this one, Craig? He did.
No.
He got hit by a sniper off a terrific kick return, got ankle tapped by one of the forwards on the opposition team, and went down, when you sort of do the high-stepping, like odd step gait to try and balance yourself after getting ankle tapped. And in doing so, he managed to pop his hammy, and you knew straight away it was a bad one because he was writhing on the ground in pain. Turns out it's a grade 3 hamstring tear, 10 to 12 weeks on the sideline for the talented young utility back. Brutal blow there. Brutal. You hate to see it. And then the final major injury this week, unless I've missed something, chat, is former Eel Nathan Brown. Ruptured his biceps, I believe, for the second time. Pretty certain he did that as a Parramatta Eel at some point. And he's also looking at 10 to 12 weeks on the sideline. Long-term injury there for the Manly forward.
Yes, really rough weekend for injuries. And you'd have to think it's going to have its impact on all those clubs that those players are from. Contract news, John. So first of all, with the Raiders.
Yeah, big one for them. He was one of the front runners for Rookie of the Year, and unfortunately done in by a knee injury. Sevilio Tamalas, though, really liking his time at the nation's capital, has re-signed till the end of 2028. Dragons Jr. scooped up by Ricky and company for this year as part of that trio of New South Wales under-19s players they signed, including a pair of Eels there. Well, one former Eel in Miles Martin, and then one current Eel in Ethan Sanders. Tamales has made the biggest jump out of all three of them. He was awesome on the wing for them, playing on the left edge, I believe. Was killing it until the knee injury, but yeah, long-term retiring there for the Green Machine, and a player that probably be Origin's always a hard thing to measure because the Blues have got so much talent in the back line, but the way he's playing, you could see him featuring at some point down the road.
And you'd also have to look at the Raiders and go, they're doing a fine job of juggling a wealth of talent.
Yeah.
That gives them arguably the best depth in the NRL at the moment.
It's up there, yeah. They've done a great job navigating the little pitfalls and trip-ups that come through the season. And you heard me on the podcast. I wasn't a believer in the Raiders going back a couple of months. I thought they were going to trip themselves up and get into a rut. Maybe it's just reflective of the odd year we're having because Joel's in chat saying the comp is crazy this year. Yeah, maybe the Raiders are the perfect reflection of that. They haven't tripped up really. The game against the Bulldogs probably where they had the big lead and then got done in. But beyond that, they've been really consistent, way more consistent than I gave them credit for. And Ricky Stewart, we've mentioned it. He definitely feels far like the most comfortable with himself in his career in Canberra, and you're really seeing that this year. He's coaching good football.
Yeah, and of course the other bit of news was that another former Eel in Jake Arthur has linked with his brother Buds.
Yeah,
up at the Newcastle Knights.
It was a player swap. It was like almost a genuine player swap, I believe. The Manly Seagulls took on a prop. Was it Paul Bryan?
Yes.
Yeah. And they've released Jake Arthur to Newcastle. So we've got two of the three NRL experienced Arthurs now at Newcastle, with Brad obviously coaching over in England. But Matty Arthur and Jake reunited. Although Matt finds himself in an odd spot because Newcastle were chasing Talon the Silver too. So I don't know, but gives them some much needed.
Are they playing this weekend in New South Wales Cup, and are they playing together? I've got a funny feeling that, Jake and Woodsy might be named in the same team this week.
If my website works. Let me go to this website. Since New South Wales Rugby League doesn't want to load for me, and my internet's working, so it's on them. We go to the knock-on effect New South Wales Cup team lists, and we have the Newcastle Knights. At number 7 is Jacob Arthur. At number 9 is Matthew Arthur. So, yeah.
So they're getting to take the field together for the first time since they were kids, and Woodsy was playing up a few grades in his age group to play in the same team as Jake. So good luck to them. Congratulations on being able to play together again. And look, I've got a feeling you might see Jake in first grade before the end of the year.
Yeah, well, Newcastle's half situation is pretty perilous, isn't it? And
yeah, it is. It is. The interesting thing will be if, because I think they haven't quite sorted out a contract for next year for Jake at the Knights. Was that right? Was it for the rest of this season?
It's just the remainder of the season.
Yeah. So if he extends there, it will be interesting because you'll have him, you'll have Woods, you'll have Dylan Brown up there. Be interesting if the halves were Jake and Dylan. So interesting times up there for the Knights. Now, people have sent me messages, obviously, about does that mean that Brad is heading to the Knights? I've got no idea. If I was BA, I probably wouldn't, because I think he
came off one long hard job with the Parramatta Eels in his first NRL gig. Newcastle's an equally massive job.
I think he can wait till he gets a choice of offers, because he'll get a choice of offers. He's doing particularly well over there in England with Leeds. The Leeds just want him to extend. They're just desperate for him to extend over there, such as the transformation that he's been able to bring for that club. So anyway, good luck to all of them. John, any final questions from chat and as we wrap this up?
I've got Chris Hill mentioning, we're talking about Canberra, obviously, and who was it that was unhappy? So, yeah, Jamie not happy with Ricky having success. I feel you there, mate. But I think sort of read money adjacent, Chris Hill mentions he hates the way Starling is baiting opposition forwards, not getting punched. Yeah, look, there are a couple of dummy halves, and obviously Reed, one of them, who have really exploited the NRL's shift away from that direct confrontation, and I'm not a huge fan of it. I feel like there is so much niggle and garbage coming, not just out of dummy halves, but the dummy halves are the biggest culprits, aren't they? Like they really know how to toe the line and press the buttons and work the whistle. And Starling is absolutely an instigator and a baiter, and he's been able to get away with it. And it's not good for the product, and it's a bit old fashioned. But you almost reckon that they should be able to sort it out on the field in some capacity. I don't know.
Look, John, and just with regard to Reed, there was the mail the other week about him possibly being put out on the market by the Dogs, looking to offload him.
He was very unhappy coming off the field again last week. And it also, look, as much as we put the boot in about Reed and how he can play a bit of hero ball, the Dogs did struggle with him off the field against the Panthers. With the shift that worked against us, because purely, I'll argue, because of the torrent of possession that the Dogs enjoyed against us on the back of some of those calls and our own errors, it didn't work so well against the Panthers, who were able to get into an arm wrestle and able to execute more pressure in better field position, and they looked far clunkier with Reed off. And evidently there was some people in the crowds that reckoned he was pretty fired up about getting pulled for that weird rejigging of the spine by putting Sexton in the dummy half and bringing Galvin off the bench into the halves.
Let's just make that as, again, a little bit of a sage advice for people who signed with the Bulldogs, that they love a shiny new toy. We'll pay a bit of money for a shiny new toy, they're not necessarily going to stick with it if it doesn't quite suit where they're heading after a year or two. And I think what we've seen is their mantra of bred not bought is a load of garbage, because there's plenty of buying that's gone on there now for the last 3-4 years. It's who can they buy next? They, I think even Braith and Asta had a bit of a laugh about them the other week when there was some suggestion about Talon De Silva maybe even ending up at the Bulldogs. And it was a laugh about the sombrero being a blue and white one. And you have to think that may well be the case, John. So anyway, just a bit of advice for any of those young forwards out there, or the young backs out there that might want to link with the Bulldogs because they're a winning club. Comes at a price.
Ben's back in chat for a great question, Mercherated. It's Fletcher's birthday on Monday. Happy birthday in advance for the young man. But he wants to know if he can get a TCT mug for him. So we'll have to work on that.
I'll tell you what I was thinking, and I might have just had a message there from Yoko. Yes, it's the same thing. Ben wants a TCT mug for his birthday.
Yes.
You better send me the logo so I can get some made.
We'll get working on it, Ben.
I was thinking, John, that we might get a few made for the watch party, and not to sell, but there's been a few people that have made inquiries about it. We might be able to do some giveaways at that. So I'll have a bit of a chat to Rob and see what we're looking at to get some of those made and how quickly they can get it turned around. And I'm glad that there are people that are particularly keen on this. So
got a couple of last questions here. Matty Butcher with a logistical question later in the season, asking if the round 27 game versus the Knights would follow straight on from the NRL. And I believe you're spot on, Matty. I'm just looking at the draw now. We play the Knights in the NRL 4:05 p.m. Cornbank Stadium, which is a Sunday, and that's our final regular season game for the NRL. And then we are billed to play the Bulldogs at 6:00 p.m. That's the. How's this working? The NRLW goes 1 week deeper regular season than the NRL. It looks like.
Yeah.
Okay, so
that'd be right. They got a shorter final series,
but you're right. They are 1 week shorter. That's why. So the penultimate round of the NRLW is round 10, and that is a 6:15 kickoff at Combank Stadium on Sunday. So play the Tigers in the NRLW, play the Knights in the NRL. It should be a double, maybe a triple header with the New South Wales Cup. I don't know if they've got the. Give me 1 sec. I'll see if.
I tell you what, you're trusting that New South Wales Rugby League will stick to their draw.
I am. No,
especially when we know they'll switch.
The New South Wales Cup have wrapped up.
Trying to manifest that switch to Kellyville this week.
The Cup have wrapped up the regular season the week before. So if there is a finals game, it'll probably go to one of their usual venues like Leichhardt or I'm trying to figure out what else they use these days. But they'll find another way to work it around. So at the very least, you're getting the 2 first grade teams there, Matty. We do have a question from Joel asking about the Joel Garner pursuit. I don't know what's going on there, Craig. We will link to Joel Garner. I think we said we weren't interested in Joel Garner at one point via Jason Rolls.
Is it Joel Garner?
Joel Garner, Luke Garner. Well, we were talking about cricket before. We're talking about cricket.
A big West Indian bowler.
We're talking about cricket before, and Keith Miller, Joel Garner. Tell you what, we could use a Joel Garner on the wing. Get a 2 meter tall specimen on the wing that can peg the football pretty good too. But yeah, look, we will link to Miller, link to Garner a while back. Garner also, kind of like Talon De Silva, being a popular figure among multiple clubs now. You can understand why, coming from the premiership winning squad at the Panthers, also quite.
I heard some strong mail about Newcastle for him.
That I could see that. I mean, Newcastle do love a back row, don't they? And Joel Luke's got the ability to play back row and also feature in the centres, which is always a handy toolkit to have at NRL level. He's going to maybe the Eels land him, but I could see him getting very easily overpaid relative to what he would bring to a team because of that premiership pedigree and positional versatility. But if the Eels land him for a decent price, I would happily cop that. Very solid acquisition to the top 30 potentially, but haven't heard much of my end, Sixties. I don't know about you.
Yeah, no, not in terms of. It's been very quiet in terms of him potentially landing at the Eels. So
yeah, but
I think there was a bit of. I'm pretty sure there was more than just smoke there for a while, but I don't know whether it's.
I imagine the Jack the Bell
anything
signing.
further's coming.
They don't occupy the same position, but their role from the squad perhaps being the senior or experienced figure to help augment the forward pack. Maybe by picking up Jack the Bell and the Eels softly ruled themselves out of the Garner signing. I'm just going to say Garner, that way I can't screw it up. I don't like cricket. That might have to be the intermission music next week, the way I'm going right now. We'll find a remix of that song. Yeah, that's a good question there from Joel. Always happy to be up to date that one there. We got some more interest in the mugs, so we'll have to get kicking on that. We'll commission Yoko to find a good partner to work with for that one there. Maddie says thanks for the update. Would have thought the women played before the men. NRL and NRLW scheduling made it. They draw the teams out of a hat. Honestly, I don't know how they figure it out.
And it'd probably also be TV scheduling. Because I think the NRLW, they were putting them on extra channels last year. From memory, I have it in the back of my head that after the final game was over last year in the NRL, and I went to the Matty Johns show, and at the same time on another Fox channel was the NRLW game up against the Matty Johns show. So I wouldn't surprise if it's something like that again this year. So that would be, I would say that'd be probably what will end up happening at the end of the year.
And I suppose a great way to finish off, asking Chad a question instead of getting a question from them, on the back of my faux pas, who's the best cricketer that could have been a footballer? Andy Simons, rest in peace, the very talented Australian cricketer, was in the Broncos pathways. And obviously there was that famous, you remember it, Craig, the famous time he shoulder charged the streaker on the cricket pitch?
Yes.
Absolutely leveled him because Andy was a big boy. Could smoke a cricket ball too. He could have been a back row pretty easily in league. Who was the Queensland cricketer, fast bowler, and I think he played halfback up to a reasonable level up in Queensland. Blonde-headed fast bowler. Andy Bickle?
Andy Bickle, that's it. No, you nailed it. Andy Bickle. Yeah. So I'm sure that he was someone who probably had to make a choice in that regard. Then, of course, you've got the cricketers who did play rugby league, and I'm just trying to think who. Graham Hughes was one of the best. Riley Smith.
Yeah, I love that bit of trivia. It always pops up whenever he's being featured in some sort of programming. Riley Smith was an Australian schoolboy footballer and cricketer. Pretty good.
Nathan Brown.
Brownie was there. Pat Cummings was a first grader in cricket out of Penrith, obviously. I'm not sure if he played rugby league back in the day, but pretty handy athlete. We've got a couple of instant responses. Malcolm Marshall. People were saying would have been zippy around the ruck. How about the Tiger coach, Malcolm Marshall? Also a great fit there. Yes, I like that.
Viv Richards, almost the Manu.
Viv Richards, yes. There's a player that could have played rugby league. Heavyweight boxer.
Just for the look.
Oh, my goodness. The chewing gum, playing in an era of no helmets and just going up against the Australian battery of Lilly and Thompson. He was an incredible athlete. Heavyweight boxer too, I believe. You don't mess with the Sir Viv. We got Michael Bevan from Chris Hill. Very, very athletic bloke, Michael Bevan. He would have found a way to be a feature. Alex Carey.
What about Hayden?
Yeah, Matty Hayden. Yeah, big
Matty
unit
Hayden.
too. Yeah.
Like you talk about a big unit playing cricket. So I'm sure he could have handled, and given that he was from Queensland, you'd have to imagine
almost certainly had some sort of rugby league pedigree.
Yeah. Must have. So good trivia question there.
Jamie's thrown in John Eels, who I don't know if he played cricket as a junior. I have met when I was a younger lad. I met John Eels at the North Sydney Oval Cricket Shop. The which one is it? Greg Chappell Cricket Store. I could not believe how big he was. I'm not a tall bloke. I'm 178 or something like that. But I was in the midst of my schoolboy footy career. I was buying a bat because I was in Sydney and played a bit of cricket on the side. Turned around, I just looked up, and John Eels was there, and he's up there. He's like 2 meters, 201 or something like that. And he was well built, huge bloke.
Sean Lane always used
it's that similar.
It was always a shock to the system when you stand next to Sean Lane to talk to Sean Lane.
Like you mentioned in this podcast, you're not short. You're not short, but you're craning your neck up there to chat to him.
It's very rare that, look, as I said, I'm just over 6'1", and it's very rare that I'm like actually having to tilt the head back.
But Lane is one of those people that you got to, and it was the same for me with John Eels in particular. I was just like, oh God, he's up there.
Yeah.
Also one of the greatest sporting nicknames of all time, Nobody, which is seems like a bit of a slap in the face, but it comes from the adage that nobody's perfect, and John Eels was the perfect footballer. Played the wrong code, but very, very talented player. He did play cricket. Actually, now I remember his autobiography. He did play cricket. Yeah, so very good footballer.
I'm sure we might end up with some answers to that question on the next live, John. I think we might go with a quick live instant reaction Thursday night. What do you think
we'll pop on
NRLW?
Give the NRLW their time to shine for sure and get on there.
Yeah, so stand by for that, people. So don't forget, we will have our preview podcast, which we will squeeze in. I'll have a chat to you, John. We might try and throw it in record that sometime tomorrow, maybe.
Yeah, we'll try and get
just
it out
to make sure
as
we
fast
get
as
it
possible
out
to turn it around for you guys, because even without the NRL, we do have 4 games to preview. That is crazy. The NRLW and the Harvey Norman Women's Premiership ramping things up for us.
And a message from Chris Ricketts, because you might be wondering what's happening with Chris. Well, he's moved to the States at the moment where he's living. At the time we're going out live, it's like 4:30 a.m. or something ridiculous in the morning.
American time is rough, so
yeah,
we'll find a way to get him involved.
He can't go waking the family up in where they're staying at the moment. So
I think we're actually a better shot of getting him on the preview podcast.
Well, he and I have been messaging this afternoon about that. I just said, because as you and I know, sometimes it's just a quick message saying you're right to go in 15 minutes and 30 minutes, and then we go, and we tend to be that fluid with when we record. We don't have a specific time when we record, but we'll see what we can do to fit in Chris to be part of that, because we know how popular he is.
Absolutely.
And maybe when things settle a bit down settle down a bit with where he is, we might be able to get him onto the live podcast, because I think he shines in that live context as well. But we'll try this week we'll try and get out the recording by tomorrow. We'll record tomorrow. Quick live instant reaction after the NRLW Thursday night. And I think that then leads us into the weekend, where we'll do our best to give coverage of the lower grades as well over the weekend, pending life as it is. And apart from that, thanks everyone for being here. Thanks to our sponsors, Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan and Parramatta, and of course the home of the Eels, Parramatta Leagues Club, where we will be for our TCT watch party, 25th of July, round 21. Watch us smoke the Broncos. Be there for a feed, some drinks, footy talk, catch up with all your favourites that are associated with us. Just come and have a good time with us.
Good old Friday football.
Don't forget to like and subscribe and all the sort of stuff you got to do with socials and YouTube. Just help us out in that regard. And John, as I always say, go you mighty Eels.